Welcome to the Unshielded podcast, where we explore the cutting edge of blockchain, digital assets, and the technologies shaping the future of decentralized finance and privacy. I'm Ian Kane, head of partnerships for Midnight and host of the Unshielded podcast. Today I'm joined by Jillian Plomin, CEO of W3I Software and Moneta Digital, the issuer of USDM. USDM is a fully regulated, MiCA-compliant, fiat-backed stablecoin built on the Cardano blockchain. Under Jillian's leadership, W3I is building a secure, compliant, and scalable blockchain-based financial infrastructure that bridges traditional finance and decentralized systems. In this episode, we'll dive into Jillian's journey leading innovation at the intersection of regulation and blockchain, explore how USDM is setting a new standard for stablecoins, and discuss the critical role privacy and compliance play in the future of digital finance. Hey, Jillian, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So to get things started, do me a favor. Tell me, who are you and what do you do as the CEO of W3I Software and Moneta Digital?
Well, my background is in politics, actually. I've also been in advertising for quite some time. So that's the experience that I bring to this. I was in the military. I worked in military intelligence. So things like keeping secrets is something that I'm good at, you might say. But that's my background. I got pulled into this by my husband, who was in TradFi, and he started exploring crypto in 2020 after all of the COVID stuff happened, and he was in money markets, and it really almost pulled that industry apart. It was a big challenge because money just doesn't move fast enough to meet people's needs in the crisis situation. So that's what really began his foray into crypto. And then as he was exploring it, he started dragging me into it on the more female-friendly NFT side. And so I got into the art and writing that is happening on the NFT side. My alter ego is Ada Bookworm. I'm a big Book.io fan, and I did a series of NFTs culminating in a novel back in 2022, I think, and that's going to be released on Book.io eventually. So that's my background in Cardano and in crypto.
I love that. It's funny. I've got a background in ad tech as well. I'm just curious, what companies did you work for? Like, what side of that industry were you in? Were you in like programmatic? Were you in performance? What is that? Or like analytics?
I had an interesting path into advertising. In college, I double majored in theater and politics, political science, and that led me down a political path in terms of my civilian career. However, I was also in the military, and I had writing experience because I wrote plays. That was my concentration in college, and so I ended up falling into a job in advertising for a company called LM&O in DC. They do all of the advertising for the National Guard. And so my unique blend of knowledge and talents served me very well there. And from there, I went on to work for an agency in New York when we moved to New York. And then I've freelanced ever since then. So it's been a winding path, you might say, and it's taken another turn now that we're in crypto. But those skills, I guess you stack skills and then you just utilize them where the opportunities come, right?
Yeah, no, that's funny. And it's funny, I was in New York as well for a very long time. So I'm sure we pass each other on Madison Avenue at some point. But
It's
very cool.
entirely possible, yeah.
For the listeners who might not be familiar, can you give a brief introduction to just W3I software and USDM and basically how they fit into the broader stablecoin and DeFi ecosystem?
Sure. So USDM is a fiat-backed stablecoin. It is regulated and run very similarly to USDC on a smaller scale. We're backed one-to-one with the US dollar. And we originated not so much as a formal business, but more as a community response to a need on the Cardano blockchain. We still remain to this day very community focused, very mission focused. And because of where we started, we are probably the most transparent and open fiat-backed stablecoin. I like to say, the most decentralized, centralized stablecoin you can possibly have. That's what we strive to be, and will continue to strive to be, even as these regulations come into being.
Oh, it's feeling good too in the market right now, right? Like previous administration maybe wasn't as friendly on the regulatory front, and now we're getting Genius Act, we're getting Clarity Act, all this stuff is starting to come together. I think we touched on it briefly with how you kind of started USDM, but like the backstory of working in politics and then ad tech, and then you kind of you went down the rabbit hole of like NFTs and stuff. What was like the aha moment where you were like, you know what, stable coins are where we need to be? I mean, I think a lot of us, right, when you use stablecoins for the first time, it's like 100x improvement to sending a wire from a bank, right? Where you got to wait some days, it's expensive. There might be forex fees if it's international. But what was the moment for you where you're like, oh, we got to go into the stablecoin um, side of the blockchain business?
I'm afraid I can't take credit for that. That was all my husband's doing. He definitely saw what we're seeing now come into being. He foresaw that a couple of years ago, and he was saying these things back then. And now we are seeing this ginormous proliferation of stable coins. He jumped into it thinking about all the ways that it can be applied in a TradFi sense. And this solves a lot of the problems that he was having back then. And so we're simply seeing what he saw now play out. I kind of got dragged into this, I guess you could say. My husband Matt was very much reminds me kind of Charles, like the visionary. He's got the idea, but when it comes to the boring pieces of administratively putting things into action and paying the bills and whatnot, he asked me to step in and help there, and so that's been my role.
Very cool. Very cool. No, it's always cool to work with people that can kind of see around corners and see where, what the future looks like. I'm curious, for you personally, what has been like the biggest thing you've learned being CEO of W3I and kind of having to go through this sometimes this regulatory burden and this, building up this great technology platform? What's like one of the major takeaways?
The biggest thing I've learned is that I can learn anything. I had to, I came to this in 2022. It was brand new to me. And really, the evil genius that he was, finding an avenue of interest with writing, with art, with the NFTs, it totally broke open this pathway of understanding this technology in a way that I never would have dreamed I would even have been interested in. I know a lot more about the finance world than I ever have before. Luckily, we do have other advisors that we've pulled in since Matt's passed to help guide us and help me continue to learn on that path. But that's really been, to me, kind of the key takeaway of when it comes to facing challenges. I almost approach it more like an exciting roller coaster. Like, let's see where this is gonna go.
Yeah. No, no, it's true. It's, like persistence matters a lot. And progress is oftentimes two steps forward, one step back. But as long as you kind of keep up you wake up every day and you solve the next problem, you solve enough problems, all of a sudden you got a great business. And I think it's a testament to what you guys have built so far over there. USDM. So right now you guys are, if I understand, you're fully regulated in the US and you're MiCA compliant, which is just a major achievement in today's complex regulatory environment. How do you see MiCA and similar frameworks influencing the next generation of stablecoin issuers around the world?
Well, we're already kind of seeing it right now where other countries are looking at MiCA, looking at what the regulations that New York State has put in place, looking at Genius, and patterning their own regulations around that. So I think Genius and MiCA, they've set a standard. In Japan, actually, they did their regulations in 2023, I believe. So all of these kind of are standard bearers that we are now seeing the rest of the world kind of take up and adapt to their own local needs. I hope that we have designed our token in such a way that it will be able to meet these requirements from the get-go. And so far, that's what we've seen. So the way that Matt and Steve designed it back in 2022, we already had an idea of what MiCA was going to look like at that time. And there were already rumblings in the United States of what regulation could look like. And we kind of built toward that end. We actually still exceed the requirements when it comes to things like transparency. And, we continue to build even within our regulatory stack in such a way that is as decentralized as possible. So hopefully moving forward, we will be able to make USDM an international icon of stablecoins.
I love that. I love that. No, you guys are off to a great start, and it's funny. There's a lot of stable coins out there, right? And some are asset backed, some are algorithmic. Frankly, some have faced skepticism, right, around transparency or collateralization. How do you guys over with USDM? How do you address the concerns, and what do you think sets it apart from other fiat backed stable coins in the market?
Well, in terms of what sets us apart, I think that's definitely our transparency. Our token has been designed to incorporate an oracle. We use the Charlie 3 oracle. We can in the future add more oracles so that it's even more accessible. But you can go on chain and see how many tokens we have on chain and how much we have in the reserve at any time. And that updates right now twice a day. So that far exceeds the once a month audits, very, very closed audits that USDC gives you. And it exceeds what the regulations require at this point in time. And I think it will be a long time, if ever, before the transparency that we give is ever actually required. But that's, part of how we designed USDM from the very beginning. In 2022, people were a lot more cautious. People were very, very suspicious of USDT and what was in their reserves and whether or not they had everything they said they had. And so we wanted to mitigate for that. And we wanted to be able to be as clear with our constituents, I guess you could say, our consumers, as possible. So we pride ourselves on that little aspect of our stack.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. And we, with Midnight too, we're talking with a lot of, whether they're stablecoin providers or exchanges or whomever about different kind of proof of reserves concepts where, you have that balance of, what lives in an off-chain world, what's in an on-chain world, and how do you really prove or authenticate to the public to build trust? This is what we're really holding. And so, I'm curious. You alluded to Tether and kind of the fear, uncertainty, and doubt that exists out there. And we've all seen what happens with like Terra Luna with these algorithmic stable coins. What do you think, like looking into your crystal ball, what do you think the future is? Is it more kind of fiat backed stable coins with just consistent transparency? Is it algorithmic stable coins that are just over collateralized? Is it a combination of both? Or what do you think the future of stable coins looks like?
That's a good question. My hope is that there is a pleasant blend of all of these options. There kind of is now, especially on Cardano. We have a really mutually beneficial relationship with all of the other stablecoins and all of the other types of stablecoins. There's something in the market for everyone, for every need. Different people have different needs and different priorities for what their stablecoin offers. And so it's nice to be able to have a variety. It's nice to be able to have those to pair up with. My personal favorite non-fiat backed would be like crypto backed stable coins with a nice basket of things in the reserve. But yeah, moving forward and from a regulatory standpoint, I don't know if algorithmic stablecoins will ever be considered the king's stablecoin, so to speak. I think it's always going to be in a government's best interest to recognize their own fiat stablecoin above all others. The question is, will they regulate those tokens out of business and create an environment that is unfriendly to algorithmics? I personally believe that opt to be a fiat-backed stablecoin like we are, you're essentially buying into the system and submitting to the will of the government that issues your fiat, and I'm okay with that. But at the same time, uh, I believe that non-fiat backed stablecoins should have the freedom to operate freely in the economy, and individuals or even businesses that choose to use them do so at their own risk. But there needs to be a way for these different types of tokens to coexist and be able to be used together.
Yeah, it's fair. And it's such like a loaded question too, where like when you ask people about you need a menu of options, right? And it's different strokes for different folks. You talk about large institutions, right? And they're going to want to have government backed asset, highly regulated. You talk about somebody who's lived through the 2008 financial crisis. They don't trust the government. Everything's got to be, code is law. And so you really do need that menu of items. But I think you touched on something which is great, which is hopefully we don't get to a point where these algorithmic stablecoins are regulated out of existence, where it's almost you don't want your wallet touching any of those. So it'll be interesting to see how this stuff evolves. And I will say overall, personally, I'm very bullish on just stablecoins in general, right? There's the TVL is growing like crazy. The market's growing like crazy. And it solves a real pain point. And that's the thing that I think is so important. I'm curious, W3I, you guys sit at like the intersection of both TradFi and blockchain infrastructure. What are you seeing from like financial institutions, from different enterprises around stablecoins? Are they asking you a lot of questions? Are you seeing a ton of adoption? What can you tell us?
We have seen a lot of businesses and finance adjacent companies, you might say, who are looking to do their own private stable coins for their own private uses. I think you'll see this a lot. You'll see we're already seeing a lot of new stable coins crop up, and I think that we're going to see a lot of that. People want to hold their own reserves. People want to have their own stable coin for their own internal processes, and then be able to use those fluidly with something like a USDC or USDT or USDM to be able to do business on a variety of blockchains. So I think we're just beginning to see the proliferation of stable coins. 2025 has been like an absolute boom of stable coins, and it's kind of glorious to see. I think that's going to continue. And what we already see happening is these kind of like layer zero solutions for swapping in and out of stable coins and having them move fluidly between chains so that businesses can do businesses around the world without the friction that we currently see in traditional finance.
Yeah, no, it's true, and I think a lot of these institutions will say they've just been waiting for that clarity, right? They didn't want to touch something where it was a gray area, and so whether you're a business that is using stable coins for remittance purposes, either publicly or kind of more like interbusiness, or DeFi, obviously stable coins are just a huge way to go risk off, right? You're in a trade, you want to kind of swap back to something stable, you go into the stable coin of your choosing. And with Midnight, we're obviously very focused on DeFi, but also private DeFi and regulatory compliant private DeFi. Sometimes we see on that front that privacy is often like it's a tension point in regulated DeFi. I'm curious, how do you view the balance between financial transparency and then also data privacy?
Yeah, and that is where Midnight comes in and kind of brilliantly solves this problem, right? It is difficult. It's hard to convince major businesses to put their dirty laundry on the blockchain. Of course, there are issues with that. And additionally, when everything is visible, it can cause major swings in the market in that ultimately have a negative impact on everyone involved. And so it is to the benefit of everyone if some of that is kept under wraps until that information needs to be known. So the environment that you guys are creating, where you have the ability to reveal just what needs to be revealed when it needs to be revealed, is going to be a game changer when it comes to bringing blockchain technology to governments, to you know, NGOs and global companies and things like that. Um, so I think it's going to be a tightrope walk, especially from a regulatory standpoint, but it's going to be a fun ride, and it's an exciting challenge to try and conquer.
So, Jillian, one of the things that I think we're really excited about here at Midnight is this ability to use the Midnight blockchain for moving collateral privately, but on chain, especially on like when we talk about institutional DeFi use cases. So you might have your Shield USD at a custodian, right? And it's $1 billion and you want to move it to a self-custody wallet, but you want to do it on chain privately in a regulatory compliant way. And then as that institution, once I have it in my self-custody wallet, I want to be able to post collateral for a trade, but I don't want to disclose I've got $1 billion in Shield USD in my wallet. I want to just post 20 million in collateral, getting it out, make the trade and be done. And then most importantly, be able to attach a DID to that transaction. So the counterparty who I'm trading with knows that I am not an OFAC sanctioned country, but they don't know specifically who I am, right? And kind of Midnight was designed for cool use cases like this. I'm curious, when you think about Shield USD and what you're doing on, the privacy side with stablecoins, what gets you excited? Is it around regulated DeFi? Is it around B2B payments? Is it, maybe enterprise supply chain? Just curious to hear your thoughts overall on like Shield USD and what you kind of designed or optimized for in the current state.
The thing that really I think I am most excited about, that I think is going to be most useful for users of Midnight, is going to be the business to business use case. Talking about paying suppliers, talking about paying employees, talking about negotiations and transactions between businesses, mergers and acquisitions. All of these things will be able to be done now on a global scale in such a way that you don't have to be as concerned with making sure that everything you're doing is compliant with everything in the country that you're in the country that your suppliers are in the country that the farmers, if you're doing RWAs like Palm does, are in. All of those things will be controlled in the background, and you'll be able to turn off and turn on what is visible from your transaction, and who can see certain data. And so I really think the application that excites me the most is for businesses, and turning what used to be a very, very complicated, paperwork heavy affair into something that can be done near instantly on chain.
It's true. And you guys are playing in a space, which to me is like super exciting. We're talking about trillions and trillions of dollars of remittances that happen, every year between B2B, and like it's just growing, right? A rising tide lifts all ships. Plus you have the introduction of agentic payments, right? So not only are you guys building programmable money with privacy built into the core, it can now be used by all these agents that are going to be executing and delivering either micropayments or large sums of payments to all these different B2B partners. I think it's a really exciting time. I'm just curious, from I guess a sensitivity standpoint, is there certain things that you think certain businesses want to keep private where there are other aspects where they may want to selectively disclose? Any kind of cool use cases you've come across thus far?
There is a legend. It is a fake legend. It's not real. That the person in finance in charge of buying the ingredients for Coca-Cola was able to reverse engineer the secret recipe and create a competitor, and that competitor is what became known as RC Cola. Now, that's not exactly how that story played out. That's not true, but you can see how, if all of your transactions are wide open on the blockchain, how something like that could definitely occur. And there are plenty of businesses who have operating secrets, for lack of a better term, that they don't want exposed to their competitors. They don't want exposed for a variety of reasons. Simply to keep their operations smooth. So in that light, that's where I see Shield USD and Midnight coming into play and solving problems that currently exist on the blockchain, on public blockchains, that we can fix. We can make this possible. We can make it possible to run a whole business on the blockchain.
It's very cool. We're very excited, obviously, on this side as well. I'm just curious, like, as you go through this process, you kind of alluded to it a little bit, which is, there might be information that country A needs that country B does not need. Are there any other like challenges or considerations that you've kind of come across as you're building a stable coin that also shields metadata?
I've seen other applications discussed for Midnight. The thing that interests me most is health data. I don't. We were in Argentina a while back talking a lot about Midnight Solutions, and when it comes to moving medical records, being able to keep that information private, but also being able to move from one doctor to the next, from one provider to the next, and having that be protected but still very accessible. I think that that is one area that is particularly exciting to me when it comes to how we move information and not just money.
Yeah, no, there's a ton of I think cool opportunities that we've come across around just HIPAA compliant information that exists on the blockchain, and then obviously when you're introducing third party insurers or payment providers into that mix, and they need to be able to have programmable private money that goes along with paying out different vendors or co-parties. It's very complicated, but it's also very, very cool. So I'm very excited to see how Shield USD plays into this overall narrative. Final question. I like to ask everybody that comes on the Unshielded podcast, give you the opportunity, this platform. Do you have any reckless predictions that you want to make? Any forecasts for the market? Is USDM going to $2 in the future? Will it stay at
I
$1?
hope not.
The floor is yours. Please feel free to predict whatever you want.
I now, like, in our current environment, I'm in a dark headspace when it comes to the relationship between traditional finance and, let's call it, blockchain finance. We've heard Charles say that those terms are gonna go away and it's just gonna be finance, and, um, those of us who have a great deal of hope for the future, probably believe that the pendulum is going to swing closer to freedom and closer to the blockchain vision for finance. And my fear is that what's really going to happen is that TradFi is going to cannibalize blockchain. And we see them attempting to do this right now, just by manipulating the regulations, the Clarity Act. We see banks lobbying to take us out, essentially. Take take out the cypherpunks that started this whole thing. So I'm not gonna make any predictions in that regard. I am gonna say I hope that the blockchain mindset is the one that prevails, and that we are able to bring a little bit more freedom to finance than what we've seen in the past. Caitlin Long mentioned recently, a little hot take of hers was that stablecoin technology and blockchain technology is probably gonna wipe out the automated clearinghouse. I think that's obvious at this point. It is becoming obsolete tech at this point, but yeah, I'll stick with that. I don't wanna make any sweeping declarations just yet, but if that does happen, you heard it here first.
You broke the news. That's fair. I'll give you a softball one, a follow up. They just stopped printing the penny. Do you think we ever get to a point where they stop printing paper dollars in a literal sense, not a metaphorical sense?
Yeah, I fear that, let's just say. I'm much more of the kind of, like, if I hadn't been dragged into crypto the way that I was, which was directly into the Cardano ecosystem, I'd totally be a Bitcoin maxi and be completely. I'm very like cash only. I don't want to be tracked, that sort of thing. So yeah, I do see that happening. We see that happening all over the world in other places where I think Dubai might be one place where they've gone completely cashless, essentially. And we've walked into places in the United States where they literally just won't take your dollars. Like, oh no, we're cashless. It's debit or credit only. And that's sad to see. I don't like to see that. I hope that that doesn't happen. But that's kind of the direction that the world is going. I can definitely see that happening. I can definitely see that happening here. It's already happening elsewhere.
Yeah, it's crazy times. And I think, you said it best earlier on, which was like you need kind of that balance at times, right? You need the regulated stable coins for the large institutions, but maybe you also need the algorithmic backed stable coins, or you need the ability to privately use the more institutionalized coins where, everything you do isn't monitored. Because, even going back further to what you said about, ad tech, we're seeing applications where your wallet not only becomes your way to actually transact with people, it actually becomes your identifier. So I know what Jillian's buying. I know, what she might be interested in. I can now target her with different opportunities. And the more information you put on chain where it's just out there publicly and you don't have control over that information, that becomes a real problem long term. I think what you guys are doing with Shield USD, with USDM, it's great. You guys are helping bring like the perfect mix of kind of regulated financial stable coins that can be used in DeFi or in payments, with a mix of kind of privacy, which is so important. And I just want to say, we really value the partnership that we have with you guys. I'm excited to watch you along on this journey. And most importantly, I appreciate you joining me today on the Unshielded podcast.
All right. Thanks so much for having me. This was fun.
Absolutely. That wraps up my conversation with Jillian Plomin, CEO of W3I Software and Moneta Digital. We explored the evolving landscape of regulated stablecoins, the importance of privacy in digital finance, and how projects like USDM are paving the way for compliant, transparent, and user-empowered DeFi ecosystems. If you found this episode valuable, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to follow us on social media for more insights on blockchain, decentralization, and the technologies redefining finance. If you found this episode valuable, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to follow Midnight on social media for more insights on blockchain, decentralization, and the technologies redefining finance.